What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses comes face to face with a talk show host who refuses to show even the most basic level of respect? Today, we're diving into an explosive confrontation that shocked viewers, ignited social media, and reportedly ended with Kate Winslet walking off set, while Joy Behar sat frozen in disbelief. This is more than just a celebrity clash. It's a powerful story about professional boundaries, personal dignity, and what happens when those lines are crossed in the most public way possible. Be sure to subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think about how this situation unfolded. The tension inside the studio was palpable from the very moment Kate Winslet walked onto the View set. Fresh off her latest critically acclaimed performance, she was there for what was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance. Another stop on a long press tour, celebrating a film already earning Oscar buzz. No one in the audience or watching from home could have predicted how quickly the conversation would spiral into something deeply uncomfortable. "Welcome back to The View, everyone," Whoopi Goldberg announced with her trademark warmth and authority. Today, we're joined by the incredibly talented Kate Winslet, who's starring in what critics are calling her most powerful performance yet. Kate smiled as she settled into her chair, radiating the kind of calm confidence that comes from decades of mastery in her craft. "Thank you so much for having me, Whoopi," she said graciously. "It's always wonderful to be here." For the first several minutes, everything unfolded exactly as expected. Sarah Haynes asked thoughtful questions about Kate's emotional preparation for the role. Another co-host praised the film's social relevance and its exploration of identity and resilience. Kate responded with intelligence and passion, speaking openly about the responsibility she feels toward the stories she chooses to tell. It was the Kate Winslet audiences have admired for years, articulate, grounded, and deeply committed to her work. Then Joy Behar leaned forward. Regular viewers immediately recognized the expression on her face. The half-smirk that often signaled a provocative question was coming. "So, Kate," Joy began, her voice coated in a layer of false sweetness, "I have to ask you something that's been bothering me." Kate nodded politely. "Of course. You've been in Hollywood for what, 30 years now?" Joy continued. "And yet you're still playing these young romantic leads. Don't you think it might be time to accept that those days are behind you?" The studio fell into an abrupt silence. Kate's smile flickered, just briefly, before she composed herself. "I'm sorry, Joy," she replied carefully, "but I'm not quite sure what you mean." "Oh, come on," Joy said dismissively, waving her hand. "You're not getting any younger. Shouldn't you be transitioning into more age-appropriate roles? You know, mothers, grandmothers. Instead of competing with actresses half your age." Whoopi shifted visibly in her seat, sensing the conversation veering into dangerous territory. "Joy, I think—" No, let me finish," Joy interrupted sharply. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. There's something almost desperate about older actresses clinging to roles meant for women in their 20s and 30s. It's not a good look, Kate." The color drained from Kate's face, but her voice remained steady. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said. "The character I'm playing is a woman in her 40s, dealing with complex, very adult themes. This isn't about age, it's about telling meaningful stories." Joy let out a short, harsh laugh. "Meaningful stories, please. You're playing dress-up, pretending to be someone you're not anymore. That's what actors do, I get it. But there's a line between acting and delusion." "Delusion?" Kate repeated quietly. The hurt in her eyes was unmistakable. "Joy, that's enough," Whoopi said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. But Joy wasn't done. "Look, I'm not trying to be mean," Joy insisted, though her tone betrayed her words. "I'm just being honest. Hollywood refuses to let women age gracefully, and when actresses like you keep taking these inappropriate roles, you're part of the problem." Kate took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I have to say, Joy, I'm genuinely taken aback by this line of questioning," she said calmly. "I came here to discuss a film that explores resilience, identity, and human connection. The age of my character is completely irrelevant to the story." "Is it, though?" Joy pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, this just looks like Hollywood selling us another fantasy. That women over 40 can still be leading ladies. That's not realistic. The cameras captured every micro expression on Kate's face as she processed what was happening. Here she was, an Oscar-winning actress, respected worldwide, being told on live television that she was too old to do her job. "Joy," Kate said slowly, her British accent growing stronger as emotion crept in, "may I ask you something?" The studio held its breath. What exactly is unrealistic about a woman continuing to exist, to love, to struggle, and to lead stories at any age? Joy opened her mouth, but Kate continued, "If men are allowed to age into leading roles without question, why are women expected to disappear?" The applause from the audience was immediate and thunderous. Kate stood up, straightened her jacket, and looked directly at Whoopi. "Thank you for having me," she said respectfully. Then she turned back to Joy. "But I won't sit here and have my worth, or any woman's worth, reduced to a number." With that, Kate Winslet walked off set, and in that moment, the conversation about age, respect, and dignity in Hollywood became impossible to ignore. "Would you ever say this to a male actor?" Kate asked, her voice steady but edged with disbelief. "Would you sit here and tell George Clooney or Brad Pitt that they're too old for romantic roles?" Joy let out a sharp scoff, waving a dismissive hand. "That's completely different, and you know it." Kate leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving Joy's face. "How is it different?" she pressed. "How is it different, Joy?" Joy didn't hesitate. "Men age differently than women do. They get distinguished. We just get old. That's reality." The studio fell into a stunned silence so complete it felt unnatural. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against everyone in the room. Even the crew members behind the cameras froze, hands hovering over equipment they had been adjusting moments before. No one dared to breathe too loudly. It was the kind of quiet that only follows a moment everyone instinctively knows has gone too far. Kate stared at Joy for a long moment, her expression unreadable. The camera lingered on her face, capturing the slight tightening of her jaw, the subtle flare of her nostrils. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost dangerously so, but beneath that control burned unmistakable fire. "That is one of the most archaic and sexist things I've heard in a very long time," she said evenly. "And coming from a woman, it's especially disappointing." Joy rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please," she replied. "Don't lecture me about sexism. I've been fighting that battle longer than you've been alive. Then why are you perpetuating it?" Kate shot back instantly, her composure beginning to crack. "Why are you sitting here telling me that my value as an actress expires at a certain age? Why are you reducing 3 decades of work, 3 decades of dedication, growth, and achievement, to whether or not I look young enough to be desirable?" A faint murmur rippled through the audience. Joy's face flushed a deep red, and for the first time she looked rattled. "I never said anything about desirability," she snapped. "I'm talking about realism." "No," Kate said firmly, her voice rising just enough to cut through the tension. "You're talking about ageism and sexism, and you're doing it on national television, while I'm sitting right here." The atmosphere was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Whoopi glanced back and forth between her co-host and her guest, her expression a mix of concern and calculation, clearly trying to find a way to redirect the conversation before it completely derailed. "You know what?" Joy said abruptly, throwing her hands up in exasperation. "If you can't handle honest criticism about your career choices, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." Kate's eyes widened in genuine disbelief. "Honest criticism," she repeated slowly. "Joy, you've spent the last 10 minutes attacking me personally and professionally for absolutely no reason. This isn't criticism. It's cruelty. Cruelty." Joy laughed bitterly. "Oh, that's rich coming from someone who lives in a bubble of privilege. You think a little honest feedback is cruel? Try living in the real world, sweetheart." The condescension in that single word hit like a slap. Kate's jaw dropped, shock flashing across her face. "Sweetheart," she said quietly. "Did you just call me sweetheart?" "Yes, I did," Joy replied defiantly, lifting her chin. Kate took a slow breath, visibly restraining herself. When she spoke again, her voice was firm, unwavering, and filled with quiet authority. "That word says everything about this conversation. You're not critiquing my work. You're not discussing art, storytelling, or the evolution of cinema. You're dismissing me, you're diminishing me, and you're doing it using the same tired standards that women in this industry have been fighting against for decades." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Kate continued, refusing to give her the space to interrupt. "I've earned the right to choose my roles," she said. "I've earned the right to tell stories about love, desire, and connection at any age, and so has every woman who refuses to disappear quietly just because society decided her youth was her most valuable asset." The studio audience erupted into applause, breaking the oppressive silence at last. Cameras caught Joy's tight smile, Whoopi's relieved exhale, and Kate's resolute expression as she leaned back in her chair, still composed, still dignified, but unmistakably done. It wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a moment, a raw, uncomfortable confrontation that exposed the deeply ingrained double standards of an entire industry, laid bare in front of millions of viewers. "Because you're acting like a spoiled child who can't handle the truth." The words landed like a slap. A collective gasp rippled through the studio. The other hosts looked visibly mortified, their eyes darting between Joy and Kate, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. Sarah Haynes leaned forward instinctively, opening her mouth to de-escalate the moment. "Maybe we should—" "No," Kate said firmly, raising her hand without taking her eyes off Joy. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I want to hear this, Joy. Please explain to me exactly what truth you believe you're delivering here." Joy leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with a smug, self-satisfied expression, as if she had been waiting for this challenge. "The truth," she said slowly, "is that Hollywood is obsessed with youth, and instead of fighting that system, you're enabling it. You're taking roles away from younger actresses, women who could actually bring authenticity to these parts, taking roles away." Kate repeated incredulously, blinking in disbelief. "Joy, do you even understand how casting works? Do you honestly think I'm out there stealing scripts from 25-year-olds in dark alleys?" A few nervous chuckles echoed from the audience, but Joy remained unmoved. "I think you're making choices that feed into a toxic system," Joy replied sharply. "And when someone points that out, you immediately cry sexism instead of taking responsibility." Kate's composure wavered. She took a measured breath, clearly choosing her words carefully. "Let me make sure I understand you," she said slowly. "You're saying that I, as a woman, am personally responsible for Hollywood's ageism simply because I continue to work as an actress?" "I'm saying," Joy countered, "that you could use your platform to advocate for better representation instead of just taking whatever role pays the most." The accusation hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Kate stared at Joy, her expression a mix of disbelief and rising anger. "Whatever role pays the most," she repeated quietly. Her voice dropped, becoming dangerously calm. "Joy, do you have any idea what you're talking about? I know you're not exactly hurting for money." Joy shot back without hesitation. "So why not be more selective? Why not step aside and leave some roles for actresses who actually need them?" The audience murmured. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Whoopi finally leaned forward, her voice firm. "Joy, I really think we need to know," Kate said sharply, cutting her off, her eyes never leaving Joy's face. "Please, Whoopi, I want to address this." She turned fully toward Joy now, her posture straight, her voice steady but charged with emotion. "Since you seem to know so much about my career decisions," Kate continued, "allow me to educate you." Joy raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "The film we're here to discuss today," Kate said, gesturing slightly, "is a project I chose very deliberately. I took a significant pay cut to be part of it, because I believed in the story. The director is a first-time filmmaker, a woman. She had been turned down repeatedly by studios who said her story was too quiet, too mature, and not marketable." The studio was silent now. "I didn't take that role because it paid well," Kate went on. "I took it because it mattered, because it told the truth about women who are rarely allowed to exist on screen unless they're young, flawless, and silent." Joy shifted in her seat. "And let's be very clear about something," Kate added. "I don't take roles away from anyone. Roles are offered, scripts are written. Decisions are made by producers, studios, and executives, many of whom are men. Blaming women for surviving within a broken system instead of fixing the system itself is not honesty. It's laziness." A wave of applause erupted from the audience. Joy scoffed. "That sounds like a convenient excuse." "No," Kate said firmly. "What's convenient is attacking women who refuse to disappear quietly. What's convenient is telling us to step aside, so everyone feels more comfortable watching us age out of relevance. She paused, her voice softening, but only slightly. You talk about authenticity, Kate continued. Let me tell you what's authentic. Women over 40 fall in love. They grieve. They change careers. They make mistakes. They lead. They desire. And they deserve to see themselves represented, not erased. The applause grew louder. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Kate wasn't finished. You accuse me of enabling ageism, she said, but what you're doing right now, on live television, is performing it. Whoopi nodded slowly, visibly relieved that someone had finally named the moment. You're not holding me accountable, Kate said. You're policing my existence, and I won't accept that. Joy's smug expression faltered just for a moment. Kate took a breath, steadying herself. If advocating for better representation means continuing to work, choosing meaningful projects, supporting new voices, and refusing to apologize for aging, then yes, I will keep doing exactly that. She glanced around the table, then back at Joy. And if that makes you uncomfortable, Kate concluded, perhaps that's the truth you need to sit with. The audience rose to its feet. Joy Behar sat back, stunned and silent, while the cameras captured the defining image of the moment. A woman refusing to shrink, refusing to be shamed, and refusing to let anyone rewrite her worth. And yet, Kate said calmly, though the edge in her voice was unmistakable, this film was directed by a woman, and more than half the crew were women under 30. But please, tell me more about how I'm supposedly hurting other women. For the first time since the confrontation began, Joy's expression faltered. Just for a fraction of a second, uncertainty flickered across her face, but she recovered quickly, straightening her posture and pressing forward, as though retreat were not an option. One film doesn't erase decades of questionable choices, Joy replied sharply. Questionable choices. Kate repeated the words slowly, disbelief giving way to something stronger resolve. Her voice grew steadier, more forceful, filling the studio with quiet authority. Joy, I've spent my entire career choosing projects that challenge me as an artist and tell meaningful stories, she said. I've worked with female directors when studios told me they weren't bankable. I've supported independent films when I could have taken the easier, more profitable route, and I've used whatever influence I have to help create opportunities for others, especially women who didn't have the doors opened for them. She paused, then looked directly at Joy. So I'll ask you this. What exactly have you done? The question landed heavily. Joy bristled. I don't need to justify my career to you, she snapped. No, Kate replied evenly, but you seem to think I need to justify mine to you. Her frustration was now unmistakable. You've spent this entire interview attacking my age, my choices, and my character, Kate continued. And for what? What is the point of this? Joy's face was growing redder by the minute. The irritation was no longer hidden behind sarcasm or performative confidence. The point, Joy said tightly, is that someone needs to have these conversations. Someone needs to call out the hypocrisy. What hypocrisy? Kate demanded instantly. Please explain to me where the hypocrisy is in an actress continuing to act. The hypocrisy, Joy replied without hesitation, is pretending that age doesn't matter when it clearly does. You can't play a college student anymore. Kate, accept it. Kate let out a short, bitter laugh, more incredulous than amused. A college student, she repeated. Joy, when was the last time you actually watched one of my films? Because I haven't played a college student in over 20 years. You know what I mean. Joy said dismissively, waving her hand as if facts were irrelevant. No, Kate replied firmly, I really don't. Her voice was unwavering now, grounded in precision rather than emotion. Because everything you've said today is based on assumptions and stereotypes, not facts, she continued. You haven't asked me about my craft. You haven't asked how I prepared for this role. You haven't asked about the themes of the film or why the story matters. Instead, you've chosen to attack me personally. The studio audience, silent until now, began to murmur. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The tension was no longer confined to the stage. It had spilled outward, impossible to ignore. I'm not attacking you, Joy insisted, her voice rising defensively. I'm having a real conversation about real issues. Real issues, Kate echoed, her voice lifting for the first time. Joy, The real issue is that you invited me onto your show under the pretense of discussing my work, and instead, you've spent the entire time trying to tear me down." Her words were sharp, deliberate. "That's not journalism," she said. "That's not entertainment. That's just mean-spirited." "Mean-spirited?" Joy scoffed. "You're being way too sensitive. This is how interviews work." "No," Kate said firmly, shaking her head. "This is not how interviews work." The room went still again. The words lingered in the air, heavy and undeniable. "This is how power gets misused," Kate continued. "This is how women get reduced instead of respected. And this," she gestured subtly between them, "is exactly why these conversations never move forward. Because instead of curiosity, there's contempt. Instead of dialogue, there's dismissal." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Kate leaned back slightly in her chair, her expression calm but resolute. "I came here to talk about my work," she said. "I came here in good faith, and I won't sit quietly while my career, my age, and my worth are treated as punchlines." The audience broke into scattered applause, hesitant at first, then stronger. Cameras cut between faces, Joy's tight, strained smile, the co-host's visible discomfort, and Kate's steady composure. It was no longer just an interview. It was a reckoning, played out live, unscripted, and impossible to undo. "This," Kate said firmly, her voice cutting through the charged air, "is how bullies operate. You've been condescending, dismissive, and outright rude from the moment you opened your mouth." Joy's eyes flashed with fury. "Excuse me," she snapped. "Did you just call me a bully? If the shoe fits," Kate replied instantly, without hesitation or apology. The tension in the room snapped like a live wire. Joy's face turned a deep crimson, and her voice rose into something shriller, less controlled. "You have some nerve coming onto my show and insulting me like this," Joy sputtered. "Your show?" Kate raised an eyebrow, incredulity written plainly across her face. "I thought this was The View, not the Joy Behar show." A ripple of gasps moved through the audience. "And I'm not insulting you," Kate continued calmly. "I'm responding to your behavior. My behavior has been perfectly professional." Joy protested sharply. "Professional?" Kate echoed, disbelief coloring her tone. "Joy, you called me sweetheart, questioned my intelligence, attacked my career choices, and suggested I'm too old to do my job. In what universe is that professional?" The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them leaned forward, clearly trying to intervene. "Maybe we could know," Kate said firmly, her voice slicing through the interruption. "I want to finish this, Joy." The room went silent again. "I came here today excited to talk about a project I'm passionate about," Kate said. "Instead, I've been subjected to what can only be described as a character assassination." Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with controlled anger. "Why?" she asked. "What did I do to deserve this treatment?" Joy's response came immediately, almost reflexively. "You didn't do anything," she said bluntly. "This is just how television works. If you can't handle the heat, don't do interviews." Kate stared at her, astonished. "So," she said slowly, "this was intentional. You deliberately set out to make this as unpleasant as possible." "I set out to have an honest conversation," Joy replied coolly. "If that made you uncomfortable, that's not my problem." "Honest conversation," Kate repeated, her voice rising again. "Joy, there has been nothing honest about this." Her words rang sharply through the studio. "You've been cruel. You've been unprofessional. And frankly, you've been embarrassing to watch." "Embarrassing?" Joy shrieked. "You're the one having a meltdown on live television because you can't handle a few tough questions." Kate's eyes blazed. "Tough questions?" She shot back. "Joy, asking about my process, my inspiration, or my collaboration with the director would be tough questions." She leaned forward now, meeting Joy's glare head on. "What you've done instead is launch a personal attack disguised as an interview." "Oh, please," Joy said, waving her hand dismissively. "You Hollywood types are all the same. You expect everyone to kiss your feet and tell you how wonderful you are." "Kiss my feet?" Kate's voice dropped into a chilling calm. "Joy, I expected basic human decency." The studio felt frozen in place. "I expected to be treated with the same respect you'd show any other guest." Kate continued quietly. Clearly, that was asking too much. Joy leaned forward aggressively, her posture confrontational. "You know what your problem is, Kate," she sneered. "You've been surrounded by yes, Men for so long that you can't handle anyone who doesn't worship you. My problem, Kate repeated softly. She sat back, inhaled deeply, and then spoke with devastating clarity. My problem is that I believed I was coming onto a show that valued dialogue over humiliation. My problem is that I thought mutual respect was still a standard, not a weakness. Her gaze swept briefly across the hosts, the cameras, the audience. My problem, she continued, is that women are still expected to smile politely while being demeaned, and when we refuse, we're labeled difficult, emotional, or ungrateful. The audience began to murmur again, louder this time. I will not accept that, Kate said firmly. I won't normalize it, excuse it, or sit quietly through it. Joy scoffed loudly. There it is. The victim's speech. No, Kate replied. This is accountability. She stood, or nearly did, pressing her palms against the armrests. You invited me here, she said. You used my work to draw viewers, and then you used your platform to tear me down. Her voice was unwavering. That's not courage. That's cruelty. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed to tangle before they emerged. Kate straightened, her composure fully restored. I've answered enough questions today, she said, and none of them were the ones that mattered. The silence that followed was deafening. Cameras continued to roll. The audience sat stunned. The hosts looked trapped between damage control and disbelief. Kate nodded once politely, but firmly, I'm done. And with that, she leaned back, no longer engaging, leaving the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. An unmistakable moment of reckoning, broadcast live and impossible to erase.